To the Couples Academy show. My name is Hassani Pettiford, and today is all about you. It is Ask the Experts. That's right. We're talking to you about your situations, whatever you may be going through. Some of you are dating. Some of you are engaged. Some of you are in a committed courtship, married, separated, divorced, on the verge. Maybe you're in a state of crisis and you're looking for help. You're looking for guidance, and we want to be able to be there for you to kind of speak to the situation that you find yourself in, so that we can give you the advice that you need to turn your life around. Before we get started, we want you to remember to like, share, world know that we are live this morning, because there's questions that you have that other people may have, and they may not be bold enough to ask those. It's a very vulnerable thing when you put yourself on Front Street and you begin to ask a question that really resonates with the rest of the people who are watching. So we want you to take the time to do that. So post your question in here right now. And so while I'm waiting for questions, let me just say, just got off a very powerful, I guess you could say it was like a conference call where hundreds of people from around the country were tuning in, and it was all about mindset. It was all about mindset. And I remember hearing something that was so powerful. It said that the tongue in your mouth must line up with the tongue in your shoes. I said, man, that's powerful. In essence, walk what you talk, right? You know, a lot of people say, real talk. No, it's real walk. What are you walking? What are you living out? How are you living your life? What are you demonstrating? What fruit? What results? What fruit do you bear in your life that's evidence of what it is that you say, or what it is that you say that you believe? I remember hearing someone say that, the mistake that most people make is that they're committed to their values, but that really doesn't mean anything. What you need to be committed to are your habits. You can have a value for health, but habits that don't line up with health. You can have a value for marriage, but don't have habits that line up with your belief about marriage. And so what are you demonstrating in your life that really makes the difference? That's what we're talking about here this morning, just to get our conversation started. And so when we think about your marriages today, are you living what it is that you believe? Are you living what you actually think, what you talk, what you preach? It's almost like a person who gets on a microphone and begins to proclaim and begins to profess and begins to declare, but their lifestyle is raggedy and doesn't line up with what they say from the pulpit, or what they say from a mic, or what they say in a podcast. And it's important that we live this life out, because if we don't, our lifestyle will expose us. See, at the end of the day, you can say all you want to say. You can think all you want to think. But if you profess to say, you know what, I really believe in fitness. I go to the gym every day. But after 3, 4, 5 months, if you come out looking exactly the same, then something's not connecting. You're not doing something. You may be going to the gym, but are you doing the necessary work? Likewise, in your marriage, many of you are in counseling. Many of you have gone through some type of intensive, or you tune into the show. And so you're putting yourself in the environment that will be conducive for change and transformation. But if there are no results in your life, then what are you actually doing? At the end of the day, everything communicates. And though your words communicate, your actions will communicate for you. Your actions will tell on you. And so I just want to give you that today as we continue in these conversations about what to do to take our relationship to the next level. So what we're going to do is go to a quick break. As you know, the Phoenix Awards Gala, we are now 15 days away, and we're really excited about that. We're going to be highlighting some amazing couples who have done some amazing things, overcome some amazing odds, and then tapped into the power of their partnership and began to do amazing things for their community and for their world. And so if you haven't gotten your tickets, make sure you go ahead and do that. But we're going to go to a quick commercial break while we wait for these questions to come in, and then we're going to dive deep and give you what you need. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Hassani and Danielle here. I'm so excited. Look at us. Look at where we at. We are at the Hilton Alpharetta, looking at this room before the incredible transformation that's about to take place on October 7th. Walls draped, stage up, lights, camera, action. And we want y'all to be there.
Are you going to be here?
Come on, get your tickets. It's October 7th. You don't want to miss this event. It is the Phoenix Awards Gala. It is our first inaugural, and we're just getting started. But we starting hot.
Oh yeah, we got to.
We're jumping out this gate like never before.
We believe either you go hard or you go home.
Go
and
hard
we're not
or
gonna be
home.
home. We're gonna
Go
be in
hard
this
or go
house
home.
where you need to be.
Come on,
So let's get it.
we want to see you on October 7th. Go to get your tickets at couplesacademy.com. We'll see you there.
All right, guys, we're back. You're watching Ask the Experts, and we're going to get right to these questions. There's a lot in here that we want to take the time to unpack. Thank you for tuning in. Let's go to the first question. How about we do that? This is from Sarah, and Sarah says, is it typical when discovering your spouse had an affair, all the past trauma and hurt from the relationship or your childhood comes to the surface? Is it typical? The answer is absolutely yes. Now, so here's the reality. You know, your childhood shapes you. There are experiences and traumas that you've had in your childhood that help you or influence how you approach life, influence how you approach stress and pressure. And so whatever you did before I do is what you do after I do. Whatever you did to deal with or process through pain and pressure in situations is how you show up today. So oftentimes when an affair happens, obviously it's very triggering, but it can trigger you all the way back to the beginning of your origin in terms of what has happened. So, for instance, let me give you a perfect example. Let's just say in this particular marriage, because of the betrayal, you are struggling with abandonment issues or rejection issues, but maybe you've experienced abandonment and rejection in your childhood, maybe something that's happened to you that you haven't healed from, you haven't recovered from. And so you find yourself now again in a similar situation. And so that particular area of your life where there is a vulnerability, because it hasn't been healed or corrected or restored, it just has been exposed again. And so past hurts and pains, if not properly dealt with, will make this current existing pain seem all the more painful, right? So it's a buildup. It's a buildup. They stack on top of each other. And so I remember working with a couple for quite some time. And this particular gentleman had always been in counseling, had always had therapy, because one of the things that he struggled with was depression. And he had all types of anxiety. And he brought that into his relationships. you don't go through a metamorphosis or a transformation just because you say I do. You're the same person you were. And so when he faced betrayal in the marriage, that same anxiety and that same depression began to creep in. And so this is why we say it's so critically important that you do your individual work, that in order to heal, the key to your marital restoration is your personal transformation. And oftentimes as the betrayed spouse, we project all of the responsibility on the person who offended us in the marriage, and they do have a major responsibility of helping you heal, but they can't do the inner work that you need to do that may stem back to your childhood. So yes, you have to do heavy lifting from things that have happened prior to the marriage. You have to do heavy lifting within your existing marriage. And oftentimes the struggle is, it's not fair. Why should I be the one to have to do all the work? And there's nothing fair about what has happened to you, whether by your spouse or by your childhood or a parent or a sibling or, someone from school, whatever that trauma may have been. But nobody's coming to save you. What I mean by that is, of course, there is support. There are support groups. There's counseling. There's Couples Academy. And we are here to guide you through a process. But at the end of the day, we are not the hero. We are just the guide. You are the hero of your own story. And so if you are open and if you are ready to receive healing, it means that you have to be a willing participant in that healing process. Okay, so yes, it is very common. And so this is why individual work is what we recommend in addition to the couple work that you need to do. So a lot of times people say, well, you know what, in terms of the order of things, I think it makes sense that I go and I get my own individual therapist, work on me, and then when I get to a better place, then I can begin to work on my marriage. But the reality is you're going to be working on yourself for the rest of your life. There's always a higher height, a deeper depth, a pitch above where you currently are that you want to reach, that you want to go to. So the individual journey that you have for your life never ends. So if you're waiting to get yourself fully whole and complete before you begin to step into your marriage, it may be too little too late. Okay. And so this is why we say you have to do all of the things simultaneously, right? You're walking the path of the marriage, you're walking the path of your individual journey, and you're doing work simultaneously in different areas to get the results. Now, multitasking has been a thing that we have managed. Some of us have mastered all throughout the course of our lives. Like, for instance, if you are a parent, right, to your children, in addition to that, you are an employee to a company. In addition to that, you are a spouse in your marriage. In addition to that, you are a sibling to your family, or whatever the roles that you play. You don't push pause on all those other things and then one at a time begin to focus and work on things. No, you're operating on all cylinders at the same time. But the one common denominator in all of those roles is you. And so as you become a better you become a better parent, you become a better spouse, you become a better sibling, you become a better employee or boss. And so at the end of the day, you are the lowest common denominator. And the focus on your personal healing will help you in all areas of your life. So hopefully that answered that question and gave you some insight in terms of what your healing process should look like. All right, let's go to another question. Here we go. This is from Cassandra. It's been 4+ years now, and I have made major changes in situation, but still constantly being accused of cheating. I have told him that I'm not. I don't see any point in staying in the marriage anymore. Well, listen, I don't know. I would have probably more questions than answers, but I do have an answer for you. The reality is statistics suggest it takes upwards of 2 years. You're saying it's 4+ years and you're still being accused. Well, have you gone through a process together? A lot of people don't go through counseling together. A lot of people don't have a lifestyle of accountability. There's no system that's been put in place. There are no checks and balances. Some people are very private and still live a very compartmentalized life. So I don't know what the relational dynamics are between you and your spouse. I don't know what support system you have in place, but when you have the necessary system and community and assistance in place, then a lot of the anxieties or fears that he has or accusations could begin to go away. Now, we will also say this is important to understand. The recovery process for couple A is going to be different for couple B based upon an incalculable number of factors, some of which could be your personal makeup. Remember, we just said we all come from a family that's different. We all have a family marinade, and the way that we approach life is going to be uniquely different. Your relational dynamic may be different than another couple's. The support that you've received may be different from another couple's. The way that you manage anxiety and pressure may be different from another person. And so all of these factors influence how couples are able to get to a better place. And so a lot of times we're getting help, but we're getting Band-Aid help. So we need major surgery, and we want to stick a Band-Aid on something thinking that will fix, that will restore, and that will heal. And it does not. So we found people who, after several years, the affair happened years ago, because you have to understand, some people come to us a week after the betrayal happens. Some come to us a year. Some come to us a decade after. And they're saying, man, the last 10 years have been so hard. And I'm like, well, what have you done? Have you read a book? Have you gone to a seminar? Have you taken a class? Have you gone to counseling? Have you done an intensive? What have you done? And while some have done some things, many have not done most things necessary to bring about true restoration in the relationship. So I would encourage you to reach out to us. Let's see what we can do to help you. But one great place to start, get the book, The Audacity of Marriage, 10 Principles to Lifelong Partnership, because we specialize in couples who are in crisis, those on the verge of divorce, those impacted by an affair, and who are trying to figure out how to restore it. And let me just also say, just because you're no longer in the affair, just because you're no longer operating in an unhealthy pattern, relational pattern with someone outside of that marriage, doesn't mean that you're functioning or operating the way that you need to in the existing relationship. Because there still needs to be a transformation in you as a person. I hear you just saying you've done some of the work, and that's great, but I don't know what hasn't been done. I don't know where the gaps are. I don't know where the deficits are. I don't know where the weaknesses and struggles are, but that's worthy of a deeper dive. And however we can assist you in that process, I would encourage you to do. But one thing I will say is that one of the keys to your breakthrough is going to be communication and over communication and over clarification. One of the books that I always reference is a book called The Advantage. It's a business book. It's not a relationship book. And they were talking about the health of corporations. What are the behaviors that allow certain companies to thrive and to succeed? And in many of the disciplines, if you will, that the book talks about is the importance of communication, clarification, and over clarification by a number of different things. And so when you are doing that, and when you are now an open book, right, and you live a life of transparency, and you're operating in current and future, actually historical, current, future, and emotional honesty, I think that would help in your efforts to bring about restoration in that marriage. Okay. Adrian, man, bro, okay, let's see. I'm looking at this real time. I'm struggling with these definitions for sexual addiction still. People were throwing narcissist around a lot in exchange for things that were simply selfish. I was walking around thinking I was a narcissist for a while. Then I realized that me reflecting on it meant I actually wasn't. Not this sexual addiction is supposed to be based on societal norms. However, sex is unique. It technically takes two people. And it seems like anything outside of that is an addiction for the person who desires it more. Well, listen, I don't know if you're getting this impression from us, but what we try to do is lay a foundation and unpack things. And this is why we're spending a couple of weeks in this, because you can't have one 30-minute podcast that speaks to the world of sexual addiction. There are layers to this. There are levels to this. There's a lot here, okay? So I want you to just take the journey with us, because as we begin to talk more, it will begin to make sense. Like, I'm not going to call you a sex addict because I don't know your situation. I'm not going to call you a narcissist because I don't know your situation. But what I will say is that nobody wants to acknowledge or admit, hey, I'm a narcissist, sign me up. No one wants to admit, hey, I'm an addict. you get to the point where you begin to have insight and aha moments that you didn't have previously, the deeper you go into the conversation. So let's just remove labels, because most people reject labels. Most people reject loaded terms anyway. Let's not focus on the label, but focus on the behavior, okay? And so the behavior, if we can come in alignment with what is true and what is not, it will point us to particular quote unquote labels that we can identify with. I will say, and I've always said that, there's a small percentage of the population who would be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, that's a thing within itself. But is it possible that you have narcissistic tendencies? Absolutely. Because most people have narcissistic tendencies. There are many behaviors, attitudes, and dispositions of a narcissist that a person who's guilty of being selfish or self-centered have. Okay, but it doesn't mean that you're a bona fide narcissist. But who cares whether you are technically a narcissist or not? If you have the behaviors that are consistent with a narcissist, then work on the behaviors. You see what I'm saying? So the focus needs to be the correct focus. Like you're making and I'm not accusing you, bro, but it seems as if you're in a battle to overcome or to not associate with a title or a label because of the stigma that's attached. But let's look at the behaviors that are attached. Likewise, when it comes to sex addiction, you can have two people who may be guilty of the same thing. One is a sex addict, one is not. Okay, so there's and this is why we need to properly diagnose. And it's difficult, to be quite honest, to be completely forthright about one's own self. Matter of fact, I'm going to mess this quote up, but I remember watching a fascinating interview with Mike Tyson. I mean, this is one of the best interviews I've ever seen. And what made it so fascinating was the interviewer. And he said something, man, I wish I could pull it up, but I don't have time. In essence, he was saying, if you read an autobiography and it does not share deficits, hardships, struggles, pain points, if it doesn't reveal the ugliness of the person, don't trust it. Don't trust it. Most people look into the mirror and lie. We lie to other people because we lie to ourselves. We deceive other people because we struggle with self-deception. And so if we're truly honest with ourselves, and in our Foundry program, we walk our men through what we call a mirror assessment. And in this mirror assessment, you are required to get real with yourself. And getting real with yourself, you have to admit the ugliness. Here it is. I just pulled it up. This is a powerful quote by George Orwell. He says, autobiography is only to be trusted when it reveals something disgraceful. A man who gives a good account of himself is probably lying, since any life, when viewed from the inside, is simply a series of defeats. Good God. What a powerful, powerful quote. And so I think what happens is we look into the mirror and we say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to convince ourselves of how great we are, how wonderful we are, how we don't have deficits. And what we do is we compare ourselves to people who are lesser, who are worser, who are in bad situations, and we puff ourselves up and we become high-minded and boastful, and we think too much of ourselves. And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the struggles that we have, period. But when you can become honest with yourself, see, it's hard to hear truths from a spouse, because when a spouse is revealing a truth to us, if it's done with disdain and contempt and frustration, we reject it altogether. But there may be some truths that we could begin to admit that will begin to be the beginning of our journey. And so self-actualization, meaning going through a process of change, must start with self-awareness. And if we're not self-aware about where we are and who we are, it's hard to walk in the actualization that will bring about transformation in our lives. So hopefully that helps. Let's go to another question. I cheated on my partner 4 years ago. He asked me if I enjoyed sex with my affair partner. I foolishly told him yes. He's been flooding about the sexual details for the past 4 years. Nothing helps. Yeah, so That's one of those questions in the full discovery process that we guide people through. And the reality is, here's the reality. Most people, no. Let me get rid of most. Okay, let's start from scratch. Some people, when they go through full disclosure and they're talking about the sexual details that they have in another person, minimize it. It wasn't good. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. I don't remember. It only lasted 2 seconds. Like we do everything to downplay what it was. And it's not believable. It's just like, come on, bro. Come on, sis. You've been in it. You've been at it. One thing we know about an affair, it's a highly emotionally intensified experience, typically in the beginning of that relationship. And then, the novelty wears off, and then there's a normal pattern that exists in that affair relationship, depending upon how long it was. Now, what I will say, there's a few different realities. Oftentimes, we go back to the things that we enjoy. Okay. And a lot of times when it comes to the sexual experience in an affair, it's not necessarily about the physical interaction of sex itself, but the emotions and the emotional drunken state that you're in when you're having sex with that person. And so it's very passionate, right? The level of passion and intensity and secrecy and naughtiness and all of these things associated with the actual act of sex that makes it feel so great and so wonderful. Technically, the physicality of it may not be, I've heard a lot of people say it was okay, but it was everything else that was incorporated into it that made it great. So I don't know if that's your situation, or physically, technically, if it was just great. So I don't know what he's having the issue with, but I would imagine, of course, he's having an issue with it because you chose someone else other than him to experience that with. And so that's hard oftentimes for a person to hear. It's hard to unlearn what you've learned. It's hard to unhear what you've heard. It's hard to unsee what you've seen. And so, this is why we both need our own individual healing journey to go through a process, because now that the cat's been let out of the bag, and now I'm dealing with what has happened, now I have to go, see, there's a grieving process he's going through, and he may be stuck and trapped in certain steps of that grieving process and haven't fully gone through all of the steps. Because if he has gone through all of the steps, and if you have had assistance with a third party that could guide you through that process, it would help him deal with it. And so that's what I would recommend and encourage. It doesn't have to be a conversation that you have for the rest of your life. I don't think that you're wrong for not being honest. I don't know how you presented it. Okay, because you can tell the truth, but some people are brutally honest. Like, why would you want to be brutal in your honesty? I'm not saying that that's you, but some of us take that approach, where some of us are more, low key. We're more careful with how we deliver the truth, because we know that the truth can be painful. So it's worth, if here's the reality, if he is still asking you, it's not going to end. And so it may make sense to take this conversation and put it in the hands of someone who can help facilitate the conversation so that you can help bring closure to it. We know that couples who don't get the necessary adequate help remain trapped in the discovery phase of the affair for quite a long time. And the discovery phase is the most painful stage, because it's almost like every conversation we have is a Q&A session, and you're still trying to pull things out, and you're ruminating in it, and you're marinating in it, and you just won't let it go. So if what you've been doing for 4 years hasn't been working, I would highly encourage you to do something else that will help bring about the result. Okay? Hope that helps. Adrian, okay. If you're in a marriage and don't want to cheat, it seems like anything short of reducing your sexual desire to your spouse's, to your partner is an addiction. Okay. If you're in a marriage and don't want to cheat, it seems like anything short of reducing your sexual desire to your partner is addiction. I see the struggle here, man. I would love to have a conversation with you to find out what's going on. Obviously, it seems as though your spouse is calling you an addict, a sex addict. And I don't know the details of your particular situation. But for me, someone who sat in this seat for quite some time, I could probably hear about your situation, not just from you, but from your spouse as well, to be able to determine, do you represent behaviors that are consistent with someone who is a sex addict? It's possible you may be. It's possible you may not be. But at the end of the day, see, once again, your argument is about the title. Let's look at the behavior. Let's look at what you've done. Let's look at the fact that there was a betrayal. I'm assuming there was. If there wasn't, let's look at the relational dynamic that exists between you, and let's properly assess it. You're looking through your lens, and your spouse or partner is looking through her lens, and there seems to be a huge disconnect. That's what we've got to dive further into to help make sense of this. And if we could do that, I think it will make a difference for you. Let's go to Ebony. It's been a little over 2 months since Discovery Day. I'm frustrated that it feels as if I'm the only person doing the work. How do I get my husband to understand that he has his part as well? Yeah, that's always been a struggle, and we've seen that. We've even seen situations where couples will go into counseling, which is really not the work. You've just shown up to find out what work to do. And it works in many different ways. Sometimes the betrayed spouse is doing all the work and the former unfaithful isn't doing a darn thing. And then there are other situations where the former unfaithful is doing all the work, but the betrayed spouse is still in a hurt place and they're not doing anything. In fact, they don't want to get their own individual help. I just had this conversation with someone yesterday. They did some couple work, but the betrayed spouse doesn't want to do any individual work at all because they feel like it's not my fault. I'm not the reason why we're here. I didn't create this hurt and pain. So what do I need to do? You need to do all the work. And so I don't know what side of the offense that you're on. But what I will say is that focus on your path. See, at the end of the day, you can't change your spouse's behavior. You can't impact. Well, let me say this differently. You can't directly say to your spouse, you need to do thus and so, and they will do it. But you can influence their behaviors by focusing on you. The best way to get your spouse to change is to change you, because when you change you, they now have to respond differently to you because you're changed. And so if they're responding differently to you because of your change, haven't they somewhat changed? They have. And so there's a way to do this thing that can bring about transformation. I do know for sure that even when both people are committed to a process, oftentimes, individuals are operating or functioning at a different pace. Right? So whatever side of the offense that I'm on, let's just say I really want this and I'm going 100 miles an hour and I'm doing the necessary work, but my spouse is going 20 miles an hour because they have their own internal hangups, their own breaks, if you will, that they keep applying that keeps them from getting to a place that they want to be. There's so many different factors involved. And so, yes, it's not so cut and dry to say, listen, you need to do the work like I'm doing the work. Well, let's discover why you're not doing the work. Let's discover what's getting in the way of you doing the work. What is the hang up? What is the thing that's causing you to push pause? Those are the things that we need to discover, because if we can remove those things, remove those obstacles and barriers out the way, it will speed up the process that they're going through so that now you two are on par with one another, not only going in the right direction, but going at a pace that gets you to the end result at a much faster pace. And what's the end result? Transformation and restoration. At the end of the day, that's what we ultimately want. All right. A lot of questions. All right. I'm on the opposite side, or the opposite end of the spectrum. That's why I'm here. I'm too judgmental, and I'm very results oriented. I find the problem and I fix it. However, I can't tell if this is a problem. Guys, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on, so forgive me. I'm gonna read this again. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's why I'm here. I'm too judgmental and I'm very results oriented. So what are you ultimately saying? I don't know what you're saying. Like, make that statement make sense so I can respond to it. Jay, my spouse had an affair 2 years ago, and lately I do not want to have sex with him. I don't understand why. Wow. I wish I had the book here with me. I don't have the book, but I'm reading a book right now. And boy, what a fascinating book it is. And I can't give you the title because I don't remember it, because I just ordered about 8 books and they all came in. And what it's talking about are the sexual wounds of the betrayed partner. And in this particular book, it's highlighting the woman. And it talks about how a spouse's behavior with another person sexually can create a sexual wound on the betrayed spouse. Now, there are emotional wounds, but then there are sexual wounds. And so if someone doesn't have a desire to engage in sex with their spouse, if someone engages in sex with their spouse, but they begin to experience physical pain when they engage in sex, if someone, just the thought and the idea of having sex is a turnoff and is repulsive, it's because there's a wound that has taken place that has not been properly addressed. Now, that wound can be healed, and there's a variety of different wounds. It's not just one wound. And as I was reading last night, I said, man, this is a fascinating topic that we're actually going to do an episode on. And the whole show is going to be talking about the 10 to 15 different wounds that sexual wounds that a betrayed spouse can experience when an affair happens. And we're probably going to talk about that next week. So I would say tune in, because that topic is coming. But what you're experiencing is very real. We know that when a betrayal has happened, it can cause a couple to go in a few different directions. Either they go into sexual overdrive, where now they're having sex every single day, several times a day, because the betrayed spouse is now in competition with the former affair partner. Okay, so if he or she was able to pull you away sexually, then I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to give you all the sex that you want. Why? To keep you from leaving. But that doesn't solve the problem, because you may not have been the reason why they stepped out in the first place. So that does not solve. And so even though you go through that season where you're going into hypersexuality, that begins to shift, and then you go into a sexual lull, right? It seems like you're in a desert place, and now your relationship is asexual, and you're not having sex. And for some couples, it's lasted for not just weeks, but for months and for years. There was a couple that we were working with. They were married for 35 years, and for the last 10 years of their marriage, there was no sexual interaction at all whatsoever, because of a deep wound that she did not heal. And so what you're experiencing is natural. It's a natural reaction to what has happened, but it is a place that you do not want to stay in. It is a place that you want to heal and recover. There's a couple right now I can think of where the spouse, the wife, has a strong desire to engage in sex with her husband, but isn't ready to do it because she doesn't want to give him the impression that just because we're having sex now that everything's good, everything's fine, everything's all right. So from her perspective, having sex too soon could send the wrong message. And there's validity to that. There's validity to that. And so what lesson was learned? If you're able to win, if you will, from her perspective, by me giving you the very thing that you want, so now you're being served and I'm being deprived because I have a sexual desire, but it may have more of a negative impact on our relationship. Because if I give you now prematurely what you should not have, it will cause other particular problems. So there are seasons to this. You see, think about picking a fruit from a tree too soon. It's not ripe. You bite into it, it's bitter. But if you pick it too late, now it's rotten, right? There's holes and worms in it. It's brown on the inside. So there's timing to this, and there's no specific amount of time that we can point to. It's got to be 3 months or 2 weeks or no. Timing is more determined by the phase and stage in the recovery process that you are in. And some people are in certain stages longer than others because of how they're showing up and what they're doing within that stage. So these are just all of the factors that are involved in the recovery process that makes one couple's recovery so completely different than another's. And even though the steps are the same, the framework is the same, how we show up and engage and interact within these stages oftentimes determines what the outcome is going to be. I think you rewrote your statement. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's why I'm here. No, that's the same one. I'm sorry. I need you to rewrite that, my friend. Okay. I just read that. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm doing this in real time. It's just me. We're still together, but I just don't have the desire to have sex with him because I still see the affair partner in my head and all the images I saw from the affair. Once again, this is real. This is what we would call a trigger. And so Danielle and I did a 4-hour mastermind on sex after betrayal. And when you begin to go from a sexual drought into engaging in sex again, it could be a very triggering experience. And in the midst of the experience, though it may potentially physically feel good, emotionally it still hurts, because I'm now seeing phantom images of this affair partner. My imagination begins to run wild. And so when you move a certain way, or when you sound a certain way, I begin to ask my question to myself: is that how you moved with her? Is that how you sounded with her? What about this new position or technique we never did? Is this what you did with her? And so this is why we say there's the individual work that you have to do, and overcoming the trigger is a major part of it. Trust and triggers are the two things that it takes the longest amount of time to recover from. And you've got to be committed to that process in order for sex to feel somewhat normal again. But maybe we don't want to go back to the way it was. Maybe we want to do something entirely different. Maybe we want to redefine and rewrite the script on what sexual intimacy looks like in our relationship. Maybe we don't want anything that reminds us of the old, but like the explorer says our relationship is dead, and that's what we want it to be, because we want to recreate a new relationship, a new connection, a new intimacy, a new norm. And so that's a journey that you both have to be on to get to a better place. And if you do that, I'm telling you, healing and transformation will come. I can't believe we're 40 minutes in. We might as well go for the hour. But what I want to do is go to a quick commercial break, give you time to post some more questions. We're going to make this an hour show. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're watching Ask the Experts.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.
Hey guys, we're back. You're watching Ask the Experts on the Couples Academy show. Adrian, appreciate your statement. Yeah, definitely reach out to me. Listen, guys, all of you all can reach out. You see that number at the bottom of the screen? We can set up a discovery call, but ultimately what you may need is a session. Sometimes doing a one-on-one session, because, we try to give concise answers, but it is a show. and a 2-minute soundbite answer may not be able to solve your situation or your problem. So please go to the website, couplesacademy.org, set up a discovery call, and let's see what we can do to help you in your situation. It seems like those are all the questions that came in today. I hope it was helpful. Listen, guys, I want you to be open. I want you to be open to what we have to say. We've been doing this for 15 years. We've sat in front of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of couples in a very similar situation that you may find yourself in. And so if you're open to the process and willing to take the necessary steps to bring about your personal healing and marital restoration, you will find yourself in a much better place. As you look at me, I want you to look at me here. You may be looking at your future self. What I mean by that is, Danielle and I were once in a painful situation in our marriage. We were on the verge of divorce. We were not connected. There was just nothing good. And so that may be where you find yourself now. And so for you, the future looks bleak. For you, you're like, there's no hope. It's a wrap. This is going to be the way that we're going to have to live our lives for the rest of our lives. And that is a lie from the pit of hell. The enemy would like you to believe that because he wants you to give up. Understand, he is an enemy, an arch enemy of marriage. Why? Why does Satan hate marriage so much? Because he knows that when a man and a woman come together in a covenant relationship, they represent the image of God in the earth. And he's trying to do everything that he can do to destroy the image of God and God's influence. And so when we talk about the purpose of our partnership, it is to be kingdom builders. We're here to advance God's kingdom and to push his agenda. And that's why we say, based upon Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, that marriage is God's secret weapon for kingdom domination in the earth. But how can you dominate as a couple if you're divided as a couple? A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. A home divided against itself cannot stand. A marriage divided against itself cannot stand. And so what does the enemy allow to creep into your marriage? Selfishness, narcissism, sex addiction, infidelity, all types of things, pornography, the list goes on and on and on. And maybe you don't have those extreme situations. Maybe it's just your own arrogance, right? Your own self-centered, it's all about me approach to life. Your inability to effectively communicate, you being caught up in offense and always hurt in your feelings, your unwillingness to forgive, your trust issues, all of these things, right? All of these things that you've allowed to enter into your heart and into your marriage creates a wedge and a gap that keeps you from having the closeness, the oneness, the intimacy that God would have us desire for us to have for his purposes. When we did not like each other, when we wanted out, what kept us together was the will of God for our marriage. What kept us together was the promise of something more, because there had to be something more to this thing called marriage than this. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't say I do for this. I didn't give my vows for this. I didn't go to work from sunup to sundown, breaking my back, financially providing for my woman and children for this. When am I going to get the benefits? When am I going to get a return on my investment? Because this is not what it is. Your dedication, your commitment, your stick-to-itivism, your relentlessness, all of those things are required because there's going to be hurdles. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be mountains that you're going to have to climb. Nobody said that every day would be a sunny day. Nobody said that there would never be rain. There are going to be hardships and seasons of struggle because guess what? Those hardships and seasons of struggle exist in life. So if it exists in life, then for sure it's going to exist in your marriage. But are you the individual that breaks, that folds, that bends to the pressure? Or do you rise up to overcome it? That's why I love the eagle. While so many other animals are running for cover and running for shelter, when a storm comes, the eagle flies into the storm and it elevates him. It elevates him or her or it, and they overcome the storm and they deal with the situation at hand. That's why the eagle is given the place that it's given in this animal kingdom. And so there's things that we can learn. The Bible is a powerful book because it even gives us lessons that we can learn from the eagle, from the ant, like all types of things. And so sometimes you find out who you really are when you face pressure in life. All right, a couple more questions we're going to go to before we end today's show. Ebony says, this is the first live my husband and I were able to catch together. Thank you for the conversation starter. Well, I'm glad that you're here. Please do not make this the last one. We want you to come on live because there's something uniquely different about being in the experience in real time than watching an archive video. But whether you're live or whether you're watching now this on archive, the goal, and we've said this from the beginning, is that after the video, you two sit down and have a conversation. Don't allow what I say to be weaponized against your partner, but allow it to create a vulnerable, sacred, safe space, atmosphere where you can engage in conversations that will help heal. Here's another question. What is your view when a spouse lives a life of secrecy and is unwilling to make any changes? Those with nothing to hide nothing. I love it. And then she goes on to say, I have discovered inappropriate conversations and emails on my spouse's phone multiple times, yet he refuses to let me have access to check. And this is just one example. What is my view? You already know my view. You've been watching long enough to know my view. It's poison. It's poison to your relationship. A spouse should not be a closed book. A spouse should not compartmentalize. At the end of the day, the reason why this phone is so triggering is because I can live a secret life on this phone. I can connect with a world outside my home with this phone. And oftentimes we are more connected to the outside world than to one another. And so, yeah, I have a problem with that. We talk about the policy of radical honesty, and the policy of radical honesty is when we're talking about current honesty is opening up all things. Like at the end of the day, I can grab my wife's phone. If I needed to grab it for something, I could with no problem. Like we talk about this all the time. Jeff, many of you know him. He's our men's coach. You know, when he was trying to restore his trust with his wife, he would literally go to bed at night and he would plug his phone up on his wife's dresser or nightstand and sleep on the opposite side of the bed. So all night long, the phone is from him. It's not tucked up under his pillow or tucked up under his mattress. He's not hugging it because he's scared that in the middle of the night she may find something. No, he's just like, listen, you could trust me. Take my phone. Do it as you will. See, that's the level of transparency that we need to have, because if your spouse had access to it, she wouldn't feel so compelled to search and dig and find, because like, who would hide something but actually give me access to the thing that they're trying to hide, right? So yes, privacy is an important thing, but I think that we even practice that incorrectly, because our privacy, the way we operate in it, really is secrecy, right? The difference between privacy and secrecy, even though the behavior looks the same, it's motive and intent. Like when I go into the bathroom to handle my business, give me some space, let me do what I got to do. And in the meantime, I got my phone because I'm going to be in here for a while. Versus I need to find a place to hide, and I'll use the bathroom as a cover and staying there for 45 minutes to do my dirt. You see, there's a difference. So we have a major problem with that. And one of the fundamental keys to a successful relationship is openness and honesty and transparency. And when you have that, everything begins to change. Is this another question? No, it's not. Okay, I think this is another one. Don't allow it to be weaponized is a great point for counseling. Yes, because a lot of times we can weaponize it. It's just like when I went to church and I heard this message, but my spouse wasn't here. I'm going to come back home and I'm going to tell my spouse what the pastor said. And of course, I'm going to shape it. And I'm going to tell you what you need to know based upon what the pastor said. And now you have an issue with the pastor because of how I shaped it. I've weaponized it. Or I've taken information that you share with me and I've thrown it back at you and I've weaponized it. And that's the problem. And see, this is why sometimes you need somebody to navigate the conversation to get you to a better place. Anyway, guys, what a great conversation today. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to continue in sex addiction next week. Now, some of you may say, you know what, that's not my issue. So I don't think I need to tune in. You need to tune in, Because as we unpack this thing, you will realize that some of the same behaviors and relational dynamics and negative impact that someone who has a sex addiction experiences is the same thing that you may be going through in your season of crisis within your marriage. So tune in, because trust and believe you can glean from the conversation. Listen, guys, I want to take you all on a journey, and we want to get to that final destination. And that final destination is healing and restoration and transformation and living and operating in your purpose. If you're committed to that process, let's get it. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekend. Have a great time. Connect with your spouse, and we'll see you on Monday for another great episode. Take care.